Greetings and salutations all. I.S. Anderson here once again with another theory of the Song of Ice and Fire series. This has to do with the final fate of King's Landing. It's been going around the internet for a while. It's been discussed here and there, but I don't think anybody has made a video about it. It asks the question of, will King's Landing burn? Now, for those of you unfamiliar with the theory, you may be thinking, well, are people theorizing that Dany's going to burn it down with their dragons? Or is Aegon going to come in and burn the place down, because he can't conquer it or anything like that? No, it's actually going to be done from somebody from within the city, either on purpose or accidentally. And what will be the cause of it, you say? Wildfire. Now, as you may remember, Mad King Aerys had a plan to do this at the end of Robert's Rebellion when he realized that he was losing the war. His exact thoughts were, let Robert be the king over ash and cooked meat. Now, of course, Jaime Lannister, he thwarted that plan when he killed the Pyromancers and King Aerys, and he managed to save a lot of lives, but he never told anybody about that, something about, Lord Stark not having the right to judge him and all of that stuff. But usually people don't ever stop and think, well, what happened to all those caches of wildfire? So let's go over that scene again with a little bit finer comb. So a little background, after the Battle of the Bells, Aerys and everybody else for the crown realizes that Robert is the real thing, he's a real threat, probably the worst threat that the Targaryens ever faced since Daemon Blackfire, and that's when Aerys became really paranoid and he had his master pyromancers going around and start planting these wildfire pots around the city. So everybody gather around, it's story time. I'm going to read you a few lines from A Story with Swords by George R. R. Martin. Just to give you some, context here. Everything was done in the utmost secrecy by a handful of master pyromancers. They did not even trust their own acolytes to help. So according to Jaime's story, these three master pyromancers were Rosart, Bellis, and Garrigus. So these three guys are going out every night in the middle of the night, planting these little pots all around King's Landing. Jaime names, the Bale of Septor. He names, Flea Bottom. He names, the basements below King's Landing, or should I say the Red Keep. And there's a lot of places. And he also sees, apparently at one point, he says that he sees the pyromancers pointing out to Aerys on the map where he places them. Aerys' hand at the time, Lord Chelsted, of course, he figures out what's going on because apparently he's not as dumb as Jaime originally thought. And he goes and confronts Aerys about this, and apparently he tries all sort of tactics. He tries joking with him. He tries, try to persuade him, talk him out of it. Tries threatening Aerys at some point, and then he starts begging. And when Aerys says, no, I'm going to plant these pots around here, I'm going to kill everybody if it comes to that. And so Chelsted, basically takes off his chain, throws it to him, and says, I'm not going to be Hand anymore. And of course, Aerys burns him alive for it because that's how he rolled. And so then Aerys makes Rosart his actual Hand of the King. Yes, a pyromancer served as Hand of the King. And coincidentally, this was the exact same pyromancer that actually burned Rickon Stark alive in front of Brandon Stark. So now keep in mind, there's only 5 people now who know about this. 3 pyromancers, King Aerys himself, and Jaime. And it's done in secret. Nobody else knows about this. Now, on the TV show, we see Jaime tell about how he killed, the first pyromancer. That was Rosart. And then he goes and kills King Aerys. But in the book, we see that he actually goes and kills the other pyromancers a couple days later. I hunted down the others and slew them as well. Bellis offered me gold. Garrigus wept for mercy. So for years, Jaime was the only person who knew about all the wildfire under King's Landing until he tells Brienne. Now, interesting part of this story, Brienne asks him, well, why didn't you tell anybody? And, he goes on about, oh, do you think Perfect Lord Stark would want to hear my side of the story? And he never tells anybody. But then the really interesting part happens. That's when he passes out. So Jaime passes out in the tub, and Brienne grabs him. She freaks out. She calls for the guards, and the Kingslayer's about falling, And he thinks, my name is Jaime. On the show, he says it out loud, but in the books, he thinks it. And in the books, immediately we cut to him being on the ground, and Qyburn, is tending to him, and Qyburn gives the explanation. Well, it's the heat from the water. It made you, it made you pass out. It can do that, which is true. And so then we hear that, then we, completely write it off as, oh, okay, yeah, Jaime had, he was about to pass out. It was from heat exhaustion, of course. So it gives us that explanation. But you gotta think, now, why did George R. Martin have Jaime pass out at that precise moment? Now, you may think, well, that's just, so we can get an insight into Jaime's head. He passes out so that Brienne could sort of, have a Florence Nightingale sort of fall for the guy. And pretty much that's true. But he probably also did it for another reason. Now nobody can say he did that specifically so Brienne can't ask, well, what exactly happened to all that wildfire underneath the city? Now, you might be thinking, well, maybe Jaime went out and collected them. It's kind of up in the air. It's kind of, jury's still out on whether or not, they were ever found or anything like that. Well, I can tell you for a fact that Jaime did not go out and collect those pots. How do I know? Because of something that happened in A Clash of Kings. Now, as you remember, in A Clash of Kings, Tyrion was preparing for the Battle of Blackwater, and he found out that Cersei was having the pyromancers, make wildfire, and so then he told the pyromancers, well, now you're going to make it for me. So let me read you a little passage from A Clash of Kings, and where Tyrion actually goes over the books and he, looks at the tally of what the pyromancers have created for him thus far. Almost 13,000 jars. Do you take me for a fool? I'm not about to pay the king's gold for empty jars and pots of sewage sealed with wax. I warn you. No, no, Helene squeaked. The sums are accurate, I swear. We have been, most fortunate, my Lord Hand. Another cache of Lord Rosart's was found. More than 300 jars. Now, apparently this stash was only found because there were some prostitutes entertaining some men down in the dragon pits. And apparently one of these men thought that the sealed casks was wine, and so he drank some. Not his day. And in case you're wondering if this was part of the wildfire that was meant to burn down the city, that same page does pretty much prove that it is. He supposed it was as good a place as any to store wildfire, and better than most. But it would have been nice if the late Lord Rosart had told someone. So yes, the wildfire is still there in King's Landing. And since it's been brought up in 2 different books, possibly more, you know that at some point it is going to come into play. So now the question is, who is going to set it off and for what reason? Now the popular theory out there is that Cersei is going to be the one to trigger the wildfire and burn down King's Landing. And yes, she is the kind of person that would do that. She does have revenge on the brain. And if Myrcella and Tommen were to be killed, she wouldn't care anymore. And that would give her enough reason to set it off. However, I don't really agree with this theory because she doesn't know about this. Now, I guess it's possible that Jaime could tell her in the future, or perhaps he already did in the past. We just never saw it. But I don't really see him telling her because he knows what kind of a person she is, and he knows that she would use it. So I don't think he would just kill King Aerys just to let Cersei burn down the city. So that means, who could possibly do it? Now, as we know from the House of the Undying, Dany had several prophecies told to her. One about 3 fires that she had to light. One for life, one for death, and one for love. Now, Dany's already lit the first fire, the fire for life. I mean, that was Khal Drogo's funeral pyre. She lit that one, and that's what gave her dragon's life. But now, what about the other 2? Now, I guess you could kind of argue that Dany burning Astapor was kind of the second fire that she lit for death because a lot of people died from that. But she gained an army from that, and I really don't think that that was the second fire for death. So, as far as I know, I don't think she's lit the second fire yet. Now, interesting enough, Dany has also had dreams where she sees King's Landing, in ashes, basically burnt to the ground. Now, is that sort of, giving her a prophecy of she's going to be responsible for burning King's Landing down? Or does it mean that by the time she gets there, it'll have already happened? Now, another possibility is that King's Landing could be an ultimate sacrifice made in the battle against the White Walkers. Now, it is possible that maybe the White Walkers will get down as far south as King's Landing, which is actually a pretty good possibility, actually. And then maybe they'll enter King's Landing, and then somebody will turn it into a big flaming death trap. Now, regardless of what happens to King's Landing, I do actually think wildfire will come into play against the White Walkers, but we'll leave that for another video another time. Now, let's just say for a moment that it is going to be part of the plan to kill off the White Walkers, lead the White Walkers and their army into King's Landing, and then, boom, blow it up and burn them all down around him. Who exactly is going to come up with this plan? Well, the only people who know about it are Jaime and Brienne. Now, of course, Brienne's not going to be able to put 2 and 2 together. I mean, unless somebody flat out tells her. I mean, Jaime already did tell her that it was there, but, I think it's already escaped her. Now, Jaime may come up with this plan if he's still alive by the time this happens. That's kind of debatable. I mean, his fate is kind of, up in the air. After, Dance with Dragons ended, we saw him going to what was probably going to be his doom. So, that leaves who could possibly be left to come up with this? Well, Tyrion, of course. I mean, he did get all the clues while he was Hand of the King. And he knows what kind of a guy Aerys was, and he knows a lot about wildfire with working with the pyromancers, so there's a good possibility that he will figure this out. Plus, he also has seen a map of the city, and he knows the secret passages where they could be hidden. But it's just a matter of, will he be able to figure out where exactly they are and how to trigger them? So anyway, I hope that left you with some food for thought. If you have any ideas on how this will happen and how it will go down, leave it in the comment below. And as always, my pertinent contact information down below in the abyss. Please comment, rate, subscribe. You know the drill. And until next time, this is Ias Anderson saying, make your lives grin. Have a good day. Thank you very much. And King's Landing will burn.